What is the scariest, creepiest outdoors experience you've ever had? When I was 10 or so, I tripped over a small, probably female, wild boar sleeping on the blacktop paved road after dark, still warm. I was a kid in Georgia, walking home from my cousin's house in pitch black darkness. I only know what it was because I figured out the scream it made when I touched it with my foot, but only realizing this after running home as fast as I could, using the distant streetlight as a guide, trailing urine the whole way home. That scream pigs make is terrifying in the dark. I thought it was Pumpkinhead. Was camping in Wyoming. In the middle of the night we hear the sounds of a number of large animals right outside the tent. We had read that we were camping in an area where bears are common. One of the large animals rubs up right against the tent. We can hear it breathing and sniffing around. Then another on the other side of the tent leans up against it. GF and I are sitting upright trying not to make a sound for we are scared shitless. Eventually the animals move away and at this point it's like 4:30 AM. So we decide frick it, let's pack and get the heck out of here. We start packing up and all of a sudden hear a collection of animals moving through the woods right behind us. We sprinted to the car, me in the driver's seat, her in the passenger, and lock the doors. I have my foot on the brake pedal and in the rear view mirror I see a cow and her calf. A freaking cow, not a bear. We started laughing hysterically. I knowingly came within 10 feet of a mountain lion when I was 12. It growled and I ran. Too scared to scream. I am so lucky it wasn't more curious or hungry. Yeah, running from cats is not advised. I was sitting in a deer stand someone had left up after the season was over, just relaxing and watching wildlife. When it started getting dark, I decided to climb down. I ended up falling and hitting my neck on a limb on the way down. Knocked me the frick out. I woke up sometime later after the sun had gone down, covered in fire ants. There was a mound at the bottom of the tree. I didn't have an allergy, but it hurt like heck. I tried dusting them off, but there was too many. I ran through the woods for a half mile to my brother's house where I lived, jumped the fence and used the water hose to rinse them all off. I was screaming so much, my brother came out and helped me wash them off. I got sick as a dog from all the bite stings. It hurt so freaking bad. Advice: don't pass out on a fire ant mound. Sound like a direct TV commercial. Don't pass out on a fire ant mound. Get direct TV. First post ever on Reddit, but had to post this when I saw this question. A year after high school my best friend was killed in a car accident. I would visit his grave on occasion and just sit there and think about things. The cemetery is outside of town and isolated, with some nice groves of trees and such. It is a rural area. I was off at college so I didn't get back too often, but about a year later I came back and wanted to visit. It was late afternoon when I got there and I was just sitting there thinking about life and such. There was a fresh grave a couple of spots away from his covered in straw while the grass grew back. As I sat there the sun started to set and I was watching the sunset and actually enjoying the quiet and the view. I heard something moving and looked around. I noticed the straw on the fresh grave move a little bit. At first I thought it was just my eyes playing a trick on me, the shadows moving in the setting sun kind of thing. It moved again and this time I knew it wasn't my imagination. I stood up and stared at the spot intently. I thought to myself this is not real, as visions of old horror movies started going through my head. Suddenly the straw exploded up into the air. I jumped. I have no idea what I said, but up out of the exploding straw I saw a chipmunk flying through the air. It landed on the ground and took off running. I stood there for a moment with my heart racing and thought to myself I wish I had a gun right now because that would be one dead chipmunk. I was in northern Sweden on a boat with a group of Boy Scouts. We camped on an island and it was jetting dark while we gathered wood for the campfire. We couldn't see anything past a beta so we constantly talked to orientate. We didn't really understand anything, but it was about hearing the voices to find back. After a while I realized there were 7 voices. We were 6 people, including me, and it was a lonely island without others on it. We were going in groups of 2 and everyone heard that additional voice. We didn't sleep that night. As a kid I once ran full speed through a stand of trees, not particularly paying attention. I emerged from the trees and looked behind me to see hundreds of spider webs, dozens of which I probably ran right through. Then, I felt something tickling my scalp. And now everyone feels itchy. Nice work OP. Went on a hiking date with a girl. Got lost in the Sequoia National Park. Helicopters were looking for us. Slept in the snow without any winter or sleep gear. It was so cold, we couldn't sleep because shivering would wake us up. This was also bear territory. Approximately 8,000 feet elevation with no sleep for 48 hours and no food for 36 hours. Finally slid down a 70-degree rock cliff to a lake with a known trail. When we made it out, the rangers asked us our route. Made the ranger say, "Wow," and no one ever did that before. BTW, married the girl and our first kid is due on the 14th of March. Out jogging on the mud lanes, the lights failing quick, so visibility is low. Run up a mud hill blocking the track. As I get to the top I see a little girl creature thing. Whatever. I panicked, rolled, fell down the hill. I am miles away from any civilization out on the hunting fields. Scared shitless. Climb back up and peer over the top and this thing's just standing there staring at me. Threw a lump of mud at it. Stange metallic sound rings out. Turns out it was a gas bottle. Laughed my butt off. This happened to my friend, who was working as a police officer at the time. We shall call my friend Tom. Anyways, Tom had just begun working as an officer and as a result he got stuck with lousy shifts. Tom worked a neighborhood where just about nothing bad ever happened, but working graveyard shifts at parks in the area can still be pretty creepy. Usually though, he would just find a couple stoners hanging out on a swing set. This one night, Tom had a shift at a local park he didn't often go to. It's about 2 AM and his only job is to just make sure no one is around and all is well. As he is walking around the outskirts of the woods, he sees one man just standing with his back facing him on the edge of the darkness of the woods. He yelled out to the man, "Hey, you, what are you doing? Come over here right now." The man turned and smiled at him. Then he dashed into the woods. Without really thinking, Tom sprinted after him. The guy was booking it, leaping over branches and ducking under fallen trees like a pro. Tom is an extremely athletic guy, but this man was a different level. As Tom finally catches the guy, he again yells out at him. The man smiles once again, then books it once again. Tom kept after him but was always a good 10-15 feet behind this guy. Finally, they reach a clearing in the woods. Tom's adrenaline is running low and it's taking all his power to keep screaming for the guy to stop. The guy turns and smiles once more. The guy books it over a hill, seemingly a step slower this time. Tom draws his gun and powers up the hill. The guy was gone. According to Tom, it was literally as if he disappeared. There was no way he could have escaped normally. To this day Tom recounts it as an encounter with a very sinister paranormal being. Good guy ghost. Makes sure Tom gets high intensity interval training workout during shifts because he doesn't have time to hit the gym during the week. Last summer I went camping with a few friends in Algonquin Park in Ontario. It's amazing. You pay to rent a site in the park and then you portage as much as you like and find an empty spot. None of the spots are near each other, so you really do feel quite alone out there. Anyway, we get to our spot, we set up, we get a fire lit and so on. We'd been warned that there had been a few bear sighting in the area, so take the usual precautions. Once it got dark, one of the girls started getting a little freaked out, didn't want to walk to her tent on her own and just felt a bit uneasy. It's understandable. When you walk away from the fire, the darkness completely swallows you. So at one stage, this girl needs to pee and obviously asks for an escort. One of the guys got up and started walking with her and suddenly stops and says there's someone out there. The girl assumes he's just trying to mess with her, but he looks at her, then back at us, with an extremely convincing panicked expression. We all assume he's full of crap. Still, it's enough to get everyone a little riled up. I'm about to chastise him for messing with someone who's clearly not enjoying it when we all hear a few twigs snapping. It's startling, but we assume it's an animal, though that in itself is quite jarring. Out of nowhere, this crazed shirtless dude with a beard and long messy hair comes sprinting towards us. I don't think I've ever been so close to pee myself. I was completely frozen and I'm not usually particularly jumpy. Also, there's not that much light, so first you just see a shape coming towards you rapidly. This is so unnecessarily drawn out. Sorry. Anyway, the dude stops, holds up his arms and says something about finding civilization. Turns out he's tripping balls and decided to leave his campsite and go for a midnight paddle and ended up near our site. We invited him to chill with us, mostly so we wouldn't be reading about a tragic drowning in the news shortly thereafter. The guy falls asleep in one of our hammocks and is gone the next morning. I assume he found his way home. Sorry for the rambling and poor syntax. I'm tired. TLDR. Some guy on mushrooms came out of nowhere and scared the crap of our group while we were camping. Hey kids, this is why you don't trip balls while camping. Outside smoking a bowl at like 2 AM and I get hit with a snowball. Not like it fell off a tree but like someone threw it. No one else was awake at my house : Twist, it was summer in Alabama. It's dark outside. Take a bag of garbage out to the can at the end of the driveway. Battery on flashlight is low. Breathing heavier. Lift can lid and drop bag in. Walk briskly back to front door while looking around. I'm a 44-year-old man. Hiking in Southern California. Saw a mountain lion. Kept hiking away from it. Saw it again. Dang cat was stalking me. Creepy and terrifying. Same kinda thing happened to me when I was hunting in Coldwater Canyon, Little Creek, except I never saw the actual cat, just its big butt paw prints next to mine on the way down the mountain. 13-year-old me was walking by a neighborhood store at dusk and went to throw away a bottle when a freaking cat jumped out of the closed-top trash can at me. I screamed like a little girl, mainly because I was. Do you like snakes? I'm sort of indifferent. Snakes are harmless where I live, not harmless elsewhere in the world. I'm driving out in the country through sugarcane fields in India. The vegetation is rich and full. We are in a place where we can actually drive a constant speed. Things are great. I see a snake and ask my friend, he's Indian and lives there, to pull over. I grab my camera and walk back toward the snake. He steps out of his car and just watches me. I thought watching out of boredom. Nope, turns out he was waiting for the freak out. The thing beautiful. It's just laying out in the sun. I get closer, snap a few more pictures. Then it moves. It moves freaking quick. I freak and jump back. Indian friend is nearly pee himself laughing. I don't know snakes very well. Apparently it was a king cobra and it didn't like me at all. After a quick head bob toward me, it fled into the field. But that one movement was all it took for me to realize I'm an idiot. When I asked him why he let me do it, he said, he wouldn't eat you. They don't like white meat. And he laughed until he cried after that. Then told me that we were only 40 minutes from a hospital. 40 minutes sounds like a lot to me. First ever post had to reply to this. You almost made me laugh out loud. Now you know India has some poisonous snakes. If I was there, I would have told you stay the frick away, cobras are quite poisonous. And a king cobra would have killed you extremely quickly. I would have laughed too, I would not have let you get close at all. PS Indian here. Seen quite a few snakes. Stayed far away. Me and my friends thought it would be a great idea to share a few drinks on the side of a dark and unfrequented mountain road at 2 in the morning when everyone should be asleep and no one would bother our drunken boisterousness. Where I grew up, it is very common to go around on motorcycles. Not the speedy racing types, but the more commercial 150cc variety. It is also very common to ride these motorcycles without helmets, and the weather usually calls for just a light windbreaker. Even on very dark nights on lonely roads such as the one we were on. After distancing ourselves sufficiently from civilization as it was, we parked by the side of the road, under a tree. I should mention there was a dim glow emanated by the moon and our eyes quickly adjusted to the darkness enough to see each other. Another thing worth mentioning is that this road led to an army encampment several kilometers away. So the only sort of people that would potentially drive by us were tough, army folk. It was now 10 minutes past drunk and we were having a good time when we see headlights creeping up towards us. We ignore them because we were well sheltered from the pavement, sitting under a large tree whose branches grew wide and provided a good deal of cover. The headlights belong to a jeep that zooms past us only to suddenly come to a halt. They see us. This was terrifying because here we were, drunk as college students usually are, on bikes, without helmets, at 3 AM on a winding mountain road. But our fear was slightly alleviated as the car drove away. Still, why stop at all? Dude probably saw there are 4 of us and one of him. Haha, loser. We joked to ourselves. Some more time passes. A second pair of headlights belonging to another car drive by us. Stop. Book it. At this point, we were getting more and more sober and more worried, so we decide to call it a night and head home. We get on our bikes and start riding back when one of us realizes he left his backpack under the tree. So, we turn around to cover those 3-4 kilometers to where we were. As we approach the tree, the backpack owner dismounts while we turn the bikes around. One of our headlights sweeps an intensely bright beam across the branches of the tree. As it points to the branches just above where we were sitting, in a flash we witness, illuminated in stark contrast to the background darkness, a human body hanging by a rope. Now we know why they stopped and drove on. I wasn't scared at the time because I don't remember it, but now that I think back to it I am terrified. I was at my cottage when I was 3 years old. I also just recently went to a petting zoo, so I was used to petting animals. I was playing outside and apparently I screamed gorilla because I saw a gorilla and I ran towards it because I wanted to pet the gorilla. Thankfully my mom decided to look over and notice that it was not a gorilla but it was in fact a huge bear. I was already half their way to pet the gorilla, so my mom had to run towards this 10-foot bear to grab me and run into the house. TLDR. I was almost mauled by a bear because I thought it was a gorilla. Although if it actually was a gorilla, you still probably would have been mauled. Went to sleep in my buddy's backyard, probably a half mile from his house. Woke up being circled by coyotes. We armed ourselves with sticks and managed to drive them off. The good ole Wild West. Back in high school, me and my friend went to the local park to smoke some weed. We were smoking for about 5 minutes when I noticed somebody watching us. I thought they might be calling the police, so we quickly move. Later we find a new spot and about 2 minutes later I see the lame guy lurking. But this time I notice what he is doing. This creep is following us around the park while vaping with a backpack. Having no idea what was in the backpack, we split so fast. The mysterious backpack is the part of this situation that would have made me split too. Forget the strange masturbating man. What's in the backpack? The biggest fright I've ever had was when I lived in an old house with an outside toilet. It was near midnight, and I was sat on the toilet leafing through an old National Geographic. It was a balmy spring night, and I was feeling calm and relaxed. That's when a pair of cats took it upon themselves to start fighting right outside the outhouse. It took me a while to figure out it was cats. At first I was convinced 2 demons were fighting over who got to eat my soul. Needless to say, I was sitting in the right place. Man, I wish I could draw what I just saw in my head. XD, that's amazing. I was convinced 2 demons were fighting over who got to eat my soul. Me and my mates were about 14-15 and slept alone in a tent in a small forest and left the tent with our stuff and there to go get pizza from the little village they all lived in. We then came back to the tent and one of the friends found a knife right by the opening, and another friend said that he'd seen it before we left and thought it was nothing. This was a lie. We were obviously really scared and didn't enter any of the 3 separate compartments in the tent. Just sat there and waited to see if we would hear anything. A couple of minutes went by and we decided it was nothing and started entering the compartments. Right when I had pulled down the zipper of our compartment about halfway, a man screamed while jumping out of the compartment. That man was my friend's dad. The knife was a plastic toy knife with fake blood on it. I was so scared that I nearly shat myself. It's by far the scariest thing I've experienced to this day. Scariest, I guess, would be getting chased across a logging site by a pee-off moose. I'm working in the bush for the summer and wind up going out to redo a survey at one location. I get there, walk off to one side of the cut block, and there's a little herd of moose off at the edge of the trees. They see me and scamper into the bush, all but one that stays just out of cover. I'm pretty excited, as I had never seen moose in the wild before, so when this moose calls at me, I decide to call back. Apparently I'm a good mimic, because it comes out across the block towards me a little bit and honks again. So I honk in return, and it comes even closer. I assume that I was either saying I want your women or hey baby come here and gimme some sugar, because this big sucker of a male moose, no antlers, it wasn't that time of year, just keeps on coming towards me. I started making other noises, swearing, cursing, slapping my shovel on rocks, and it did not stop, and sped up. Needless to say, a half ton of pee-off sausage on the hoof is pretty intimidating. So I finally turned tail and broke the world record for the 100-yard dash across logging slash and only turned around when I was behind my truck. The moose had stopped halfway and then buggered off. TLDR, moose are evil. 1000 on the light side. Moose do not play. Me and some friends of mine were adventuring through the outskirts of town. We eventually get to someone's property line. Being young and stupid, we decide to hop over the barbed wire fence into the guy's property. We get up to a nice little area with trees. All of a sudden, we see a guy come out of the house we're looking at. He has what looks to be a gun over his shoulder. This man proceeds to get on an ATV and ride, we assumed, towards us. We booked it out of there immediately. Looking back, the guy's property was huge and he was probably going to hunt or something gun related. Years ago, staying at my aunt's house in Nova Scotia, a sister of my friend and her friend set up this elaborate scavenger hunt for my brother, my friend and myself. We ended going up to the local graveyard after dark, and a few other spots, and eventually ended up going down to the beach. We saw a small light in the direction we were going. As we got closer, my brother threw a small rock at it. Nothing. We get up to it and there is a small candle and a real human skull behind it. Freaked us right out. Turns out that erosion from the lake had revealed an occupant of a very old, 100+ years graveyard. The skull was reburied. I was visiting my friend in Australia. I'm British. We decided it would be an awesome idea to hit the countryside, set up camp and eat a crap ton of shrooms. It was all going swimmingly. We were laughing, tripping balls while watching the stars. Awesome. Then we decided to go for a walk. The bush started to get thicker and thicker, and then I walked into what can only be described as a jungle of spiders' webs. Not the kind of spiders' webs you get back in lil old England. These were the biggest, baddest webs Mother Nature has to offer. So thick that they didn't even break when I was waving my body around like a madman. Did I mention I hate spiders? Needless to say, this is my worst nightmare coming true. On shrooms, in the dark, on the other side of the world, I made my mate spend an hour searching every inch of me for evil, venomous arachnids. Note to self, never do shrooms in Australia. Crap really gets real. I fell down a snow-covered hole that a bull had dug on the farm my family was renting when I was about 7 or 8. My family was technically renting the farmhouse, while our landlord used the fields to raise cattle. My siblings and I were all in 4-H, and had steers that he had allowed us to care for. One evening in winter, we took my sister's friend out to see the steers, but my siblings decided to go back to the house via a shortcut through a field. The snow was deep but they are taller than me and had no trouble. I called out for them to slow down, but they were so absorbed in talking with the friend, they either A, didn't hear me or B, decided to ignore me. I felt the snow give out from under me, and I dropped down until the snow was up to my chin. I screamed for them to come back but no one did. My parents don't know how long I was out there. It felt like an eternity. I was so sure I was going to die that for quite a while I just looked up at the stars, sort of resigned that I wasn't going to get back home. I did fight though, and started to pull myself out and dig through the snow. Took a while, and I lost both my boots in the process, but I made it to the nearest barbed wire fence and climbed over it in my socks. I walked back home and entered my house to be met by very confused parents. My siblings had said I was just playing outside. In the springtime, our landlord found the hole and filled it, and brought me back my boots. I was not aware bulls dug holes. I must learn more. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.